they can go move into a spot, move into a joint position, and they can control it there, and they don't have to compensate elsewhere, right? Poor movement quality would look like this. I can't move it in my hips, so guess what? I gotta move it in my back. Now my back hurts, okay? They have great stress tolerance, great movement quality, and then the last thing is they have high levels of fitness. So this is obviously dependent on like the sport that you're playing. With like high level of fitness for a powerlifter is different from what it would be for a soccer player or something like that. But typically speaking, a lot of field sport athletes will have not the same, but they'll have similar fitness demands. Okay, we'll go over that in a second. Our low performing athlete with the small physiological buffer zone has poor stress tolerance or a very small glass. So when you put the same stress on them, that shit overflows like that. They have poor movement quality and then poor fitness. Okay, so pretty obvious with those two there. Here's what makes the best athletes the best athletes, right? We had some good conversations when we were at IFAST this weekend about this, but when the stars don't align, the best athletes can still perform at high levels. And what I mean by that is, let's say you got a college athlete who is real, it's a lot of stress applied to them from training, from games, from school, from practice, all that stuff. So their stress tolerance kind of craps the bed and goes down. But guess what? Because they have such great movement quality and such high levels of fitness, it can almost make up for that, right? You flip it around the other way. Let's say you have a really weak soccer player, right? So their fitness, certain fitness qualities aren't that strong, but pun intended. So certain fitness qualities might be a little bit lower than what we might want them to be. But guess what? This guy's like an aerobic engine, so he's got a great tolerance for stress. He's able to manage all that stuff really effectively. He moves really well. He's just not that strong. Well, he still might be a really high-performing athlete, because these things make up for it. And obviously, he's really skilled with the sport, but maybe he avoids injury because he has great movement and great stress tolerance. Okay. Let's say you got somebody that moves like crap. This is probably the most common thing we see. So somebody who might move like crap, but guess what? Somehow they're able to recover well, they're able to tolerate a lot of stress, and they're really freaking strong. And that might mask their poor movement. Okay? You compare and contrast that down low with the low performing athlete. Let's say you got somebody that, and this is probably what we see more often, they not only move like crap, but guess what? They also don't tolerate stress well. That's probably one of the things we see very commonly. But you know what? They have a really high level of fitness. They're really strong, and they can, do like repeat 120-yard sprints, like it's their job. They're glycolytic monsters, synthetic extended bros, right? That's probably the thing we see the most of. So if that's the case, then their buffer zone, it's all a theory, but that goes from being out here to now being shrinking a lot more. So that doesn't say that you still can't perform at high levels, but it means that the distance between breakdown and poor performance is a lot smaller than what it's like if we improve movement quality or we improve stress tolerance. So when I was putting this up here, I'm thinking okay, well, obviously for in-season athletes, we want to try to maximize these things, or more so optimize these things the best we can. But really, when you think about it, this is how I just view training in general. In-season training, good in-season training is just good training. You know what I mean? Just because somebody's in season, a lot of the very similar, to a degree, a lot of similar principles will apply for out of season training. Certain things will be different, exercise selection, volume, things like that. But wouldn't you guys agree that if I can get somebody to move really well and have really high levels of fitness specific to their sport, and I get them to tolerate stress really well so that their bucket doesn't overflow when stress gets applied to them, would you guys agree that that would be something we'd want for all athletes, people in the off season? I'm busy. People in the off season versus people in season, right? You guys kind of follow me with that. So for me, it makes a lot of sense here. So when you write up programs, your overarching philosophy, at least in my eyes, the way I view training is, how can I have athletes tolerate stress better? How can I help them move better? And and how can I help them achieve levels of fitness that are, important for their sport? And it's going to depend on what we're talking about. So when we talk about improving stress tolerance, we want to be able to basically get a bigger glass so that when we dump all the same amount of stress in, we're able to handle it better. So basically, looking at things like improving recovery, okay? Do whatever measures we need to for that. Improving what we could call autonomic variability. So if you're a sympathetic monster, walks around like this all the time and can't breathe, well, if I can get you out of being sympathetic a lot and I can get you into being parasympathetic when it's not time to be sympathetic, we're going to be able to have a bigger glass. Real good example. James Anderson, the guy that taught the course this weekend, talked about this. So there was a story from where was it from?
Which one?
Grizzly bear?
Oh, Montana. There was a grizzly bear that attacked a guy, and he nearly died, but he got away because he punched a grizzly bear in the throat. Now, if you can imagine, the kind of look and the kind of sympathetic dominant system you would have if a grizzly bear is attacking you, and you thought, I gotta fucking live, so I better punch this grizzly bear down the throat.
This is the definition of fight or flight. So the analogy he uses is when it's time to go punch a grizzly bear down the throat mode, let's do that, right? So competition, let's fight or flight, let's kick some ass. But if you walk around after the game or after training, like you're about to punch a grizzly bear down the throat, your glass goes from this to like that. Okay? If we still try to apply the same amount of stress on you, it's not gonna end well in our favor, right? So that's where when we talk about this variability, autonomic, in the brain and whatnot, I think PRI is a really good tool that we can use for that, because it, even though we look at peripheral biomechanics, at the end of the day, we're trying to get an oversympathetic extended system to be able to relax and shut off tone where we don't need it and be able to access some parasympathetic. Okay. Coincidentally, having really high stress tolerance also is related to high levels of fitness. That does not look like an arrow. Okay? You look at a lot of like a really aerobic dominant athlete, right? Because they have such the aerobic system, aerobic training stimulates vagal tone. That's going to stimulate more parasympathetic function. If we're more parasympathetic, we're able to handle stress better. But we're also, we also have higher levels of fitness. So you can't look at it like it's only this or it's only that. They're very interrelated. So if we want higher levels of fitness, what if I told you you could have higher levels of fitness by training the right way, training your energy systems the right way, getting some good cardiac output work in, aerobic work in, beefing that system up. And not only does that help you express fitness better, but it also helps you tolerate stress better. Wouldn't you agree that's a good bang for your buck? Then what if I told you we could do some PRI stuff that will help your quality of movement, but then it also helps you tolerate stress better because now we're getting out of extension, we're stimulating the parasympathetic system. Isn't that shit you'd want to do? It doesn't. It's not specific towards just in-season athletes, but that's stuff that, in my eyes, we want to do all the time. What if I told you we could enhance movement quality with certain fitness moves? So much of it is, it's also interrelated. Here's another thing too for you guys to consider, right? A lot of people will jump to the conclusion when you learn about assessment and corrective exercise and PRI and stuff like that, that an injury is the result of poor, or I should probably circle this one, poor movement quality. What happens if you demonstrate, I take Jeff through his eval on day one, you demonstrate really perfect movement for what we want, right? On that first day, your overhead squat's awesome, you can internally rotate your hips. But what happens if you're a soccer player, your aerobic system is so garbage that you can't get your heart rate down to recover better, so you basically turn into a highly fatigable glycolytic monster, right, because of your poor fitness levels. So now because of that, you can't control your body in space, so maybe your ACL tear isn't a result of you moving poorly. It's not a movement issue, it's more of a capacity issue. So if we improve in this case, the aerobic system, whatever, name your sport, whatever trait we're looking for. But if we can improve that fitness quality, maybe now our movement won't suck so much, right? Like it's so interrelated, and sometimes I think people think it's either this or that or it's this, and in reality, they kind of feed on each other, right? So bring this back to how it relates to the in-season athlete. If we can optimize all this stuff, that's just gonna make the difference between performing at high levels when it counts and not performing well. Make that gap that much bigger. It'll make staying injury-free and being, you know, an injured mess, like, you know, make it that much bigger. So, I don't know. I jotted some notes down here, but I think we kind of went through it all. Do you guys have any questions about that stuff? Any thoughts? If that's not cool shit, I don't know what it is. You know what I mean? Like this is the stuff that, like, you know, I get like a red line going, and then like,